Welcome to Let's Address This with Qasim Rashid. I'm excited to have back on the show my good friend, future congressman from the 3rd District of Pennsylvania, State Representative Christopher Rabb. Rep. Great to have you with
Hey,
us.
good to be back on.
We had you on 4 or 5 months ago, and now we're only about a month out from Election Day, and your campaign has caught fire. I've seen the momentum grow. You guys are getting some amazing endorsements. Give us a lay of the land of what's happening in the race right now, just for folks tuning in.
Yeah,
I'm already going to vouch for you to everybody watching. Rep Rab is fantastic on all the issues: universal health care, workers' rights, criminal justice reform, anti genocide, anti AIPAC, pro working people. All these things are a given. Question now is these last 30 days. Give us a status of the campaign and what we need to do to make sure you get across the finish line.
I appreciate that. So I'm running in the Pennsylvania 3rd, which is the bluest congressional district in the entire nation. It's plus 40. It's we have more raccoons than Republicans in this district.
Mm.
Uh, and it's the first time in 35 years that there's an open seat. So no incumbent to unseat in this upcoming May 19th primary. And in Pennsylvania, you just have to win a plurality. So whoever gets the most votes wins. And only Democrats can vote in the Democratic primary. We have a closed primary system. I have a bill in the state legislature where I'm a 5-term state lawmaker to open up primaries so unaffiliated folks can vote in either the
Mm.
Democratic or Republican primary. But that said, we're coming down to the final 4 weeks and I'm tied for first place. So I'm very viable. I've outraised both of my establishment opponents. Um, in fact, I've raised almost as much as both of them combined.
Amazing.
I have, gosh, 10 times as many donors, local donors, as my opponents combined. I have more small donors, more national donors, and more young donors. So on the financial side, that's really important to show that there are true progressives who can raise money to have a well-resourced campaign.
And
But
you've
I
done it, and you've done it without corporate money. Like their money is coming from corporations and APAC. Your money is coming in from ordinary folks like the people watching this live stream right now.
Yeah, I was literally on a bus talking to someone at community college here who was listening to me. And while we were talking, he was on his phone and I saw that he gave me $10.
It's amazing.
I mean, I'm like,
Yeah.
he's 20 years old. He's a Haitian immigrant. And we were just vibing on the bus
Yeah.
and he gave me $10. You know how much $10 means to him and
Oh,
to me when you're
absolutely.
20 years old. He doesn't have a job and he felt connected, he felt seen in this campaign. And I think to me that that's a hallmark where people who have been taken for granted, who have been maligned, who've been marginalized by their own party are seeing someone who is technically a Democrat, but my affiliation is not to party, it's to the people.
To the principal death. And Rep, I think you've really nailed on kind of the frustration that so many people on our side of the aisle have at the fecklessness of the establishment wing of the party, of the corporate wing of the party. Just yesterday, Jared Golden became the tie-breaking vote on a democratic resolution to stop Trump from waging illegal war on Iran. He's a Democrat, Jared Golden. He's retiring. He's in Maine. He's got no political ambitions in the future, but he decided, you know what? Let me give a final FU to Iranian civilians and to American taxpayers to spend billions of dollars on a war that we don't need. And I wanted to ask your opinion on this because I know it's easy for us to call out the absurdity of Golden. What does this say to you about Hakeem Jeffries that he can't keep his caucus in order on something as vital as being the anti-war party?
It's the corrosive influence of money in politics,
Yeah.
right? You always have to connect it to the donor base, which is why I brought up this young man who gave me $10 on the bus who's 20 years old. When you are accountable to regular folks and not to moneyed interests, I mean, there's a war machine that is bipartisan. There are
Yeah.
Democratic war
Mhm.
hawks out there.
That's right.
And if you are afraid that you're going to estrange yourself from the moneyed class that dictates who stays in office, who's in leadership, what is the legislative agenda, it's harder to corral people like Golden if the donors who are funding your political apparatus are saying, this is a war that actually benefits us financially, even though it doesn't benefit working people or the globe or the environment for that
Yeah,
matter. And I think that's when people connect the dots, people understand why it's important that folks like me who do not take corporate PAC money, who do not cater to wealthy insiders, are the most important type of people you want to send to Congress because you know that they're going to speak up on your behalf because
right.
that's what they got there. But
That's
it's
right.
not reasonable for folks who have already been compromised to be held to account by regular people because that's not what fuels their campaigns and their candidacies.
Exactly right. And, I want to talk a little bit about some of the endorsements you've gotten as well. Not because I think endorsements necessarily win or lose elections, but because I think the company you keep is a reflection of the values you have. And I want people to understand your values by the company that you're keeping. You've had some pretty remarkable endorsements. I know there's a bunch that you can't talk about just yet, and I'm excited about the announcements coming up. But the ones that are public, can you share a bit with our listeners? Who are the people? What is the coalition you built so far in this campaign?
I am so proud of the wide array of endorsements my campaign has earned, and I have to say this is a unique dynamic for me because I'm used to beating people who have a lot more endorsements than I do, and most endorsements don't matter; like they're just paper endorsements. But these endorsements come with real gravitas. So my badass comrade. Congresswoman Summer Lee
It's
uh,
amazing.
endorsed. Now, we worked together in the Pennsylvania House. We shut down the House of Representatives during the summer of 2020 to demand immediate legislative action on police accountability. And she was really the leader of a small group of us, Black lawmakers, to shut it down and get things passed into law within a matter of weeks of that nonviolent direct action. So having the endorsement of Summer Lee is a big deal. She
Huge,
is all
huge.
in. But we also just got the endorsement of the Congressional Progressive Caucus PAC, which is the caucus that is most aligned with my values. And we have Justice Dems, so the political infrastructure behind the squad, Working Families Party, DSA. I identify as a Democratic Socialist, so that matters a lot. So it's the Philly DSA, and I
Yeah.
hope the National DSA will come on board too.
And to double down on your point about Working Families Party, I want listeners to understand this is the platform that Zohran Mamdani ran on that elevated him to mayor of New York City. Those same leaders looked at Rep. Rab's platform and said, yeah, this is our guy. So if you like Zoran, you're going to love Rep. Rab. I can promise you that. I also want to contrast that with the support that your opponents are getting from the corporate money, from AIPAC. Because right now, while you are killing it on small dollar donations and on building momentum, they are attacking you aggressively with dark money packs and APAC. Can you talk a little bit about what you're up against? And I put your website in the chat so folks can go and donate. But I want you to talk a little bit, just paint the stark reality of this hill that you're facing of attacks from dark money organizations.
Yeah, so because this is the first truly contested race in years, there's an infusion of dark money that came in 2 months before E-Day, and to the tune of $2.5 million from a super PAC called 314 Action, which on its surface is supporting folks, candidates who have a STEM background, and that's really important. I don't have such a background. I appreciate people who do, but the problem is in 2024, they received a lot of money from a group called United Democracy Project, which is
Mm,
for APAC,
yep,
and it's
that's
fully
right.
funded by APAC. And then UDP gave to 314 Action a lot of money.
That's right.
So there's a direct link to APAC.
Yep.
But here's something: if folks are not concerned about APAC, here's the other thing: 314 Action is putting this independent expenditure out there, and it's trying to send the message that my opponent is for universal health care. But I'm the only one in this race who has said I would co-sponsor the Medicare for All bill. So everyone's talking about universal health care, but I'm the only one who would commit to voting for and to affirming and co-sponsoring the most consequential bill around universal health care. And so they're not saying it. But here's the other piece. Every single Democratic position currently in Congress who 314 Action has endorsed is not a co-sponsor
Wow.
of Jayapal's bill.
Yep.
0 of all of their endorsed candidates. And last night at a candidate forum, my opponent was saying, "Oh, that's not accurate because they couldn't have voted on the bill." I said, "I wasn't asking about who voted on a bill. That has not
That's
come up,
sponsoring. Yeah.
but just
Yeah.
co-sponsoring it." And that tells you everything you need to know. And because she's benefited so much from this super PAC, she hasn't been she hasn't felt the need to raise money from regular people.
Of course not.
The
And
average donation that she's come into her campaign is like nearly $800. Mine is under 150.
and again, to put that in perspective, I think I read something like 80% of Americans can't afford a $400 emergency. Her average donation is double that.
Yes.
So she is not out for the average American. There's just no possible way. And that doesn't, and I'm not even gonna impute intent to her. I'm just stating a fact that when your average donations are nearly $1,000, you are out for the people who can afford $1,000, which is less than 10% of Americans. And
Yeah,
and
but
that's not who we need in an office.
it's worse. She also gave a $250,000 to her own campaign. I don't listen, I'm not independently wealthy. I'm not even dependently wealthy. So I don't have the capacity to do that, but I don't think, one's wealth should dictate how
Agreed.
viable.
Completely agree. And I wanna also double down on this point you made, Rep. Rab, about AIPAC funneling money through a back channel to come after you and attack you. And as someone here in Illinois, we just saw this happen in March in our primary, where AIPAC set up front groups, elect Chicago women, or Chicago Progressive Caucus, to make it seem like it was a positive thing. Because who doesn't want to elect more women or who doesn't want to elect more progressives? But AIPAC knows that their brand, for all the reasons, genocide, apartheid, occupation, war crimes, they know their brand is so toxic that they can't even touch their own name when talking about trying to get folks elected. They spent $22 million in Illinois, didn't mention AIPAC once, didn't mention Israel once, didn't mention genocide once, because they know that people are sick and tired of that trash. And they're trying to build that same playbook in Pennsylvania, in District 3. And that's where, to the folks watching, I'm putting the link in the chat group. Do donate to Representative Rabb. I want to talk about one attack I've seen on you, and I want you to address it directly. The attack is that somehow you you don't take hate crimes seriously because you have voted against hate crime legislation in the past. Can you enlighten the audience more directly from you, your thought process in this space?
Sure. So I actually did vote for those bills because I worked assiduously with organizations who understand that these are problematic pieces of legislation and law because they don't actually keep us safer. They don't actually address the root causes. And oftentimes, prosecutors who are overwhelmingly white and male and don't share our politics are using those very hate crime offenses against the people who are most targeted by hate crimes. But
Exactly.
the average person doesn't know that because that's not something corporate media lifts up. So, of course, you would be for things that would go against hate. On paper, that's what they say, but in reality, it's quite different. So, I've actually voted for those bills because I helped make them better. But
Yeah.
philosophically, I oppose hate crime laws because of both how they're executed and also how they're structured. If you believe performative training of law enforcement around these issues, data collection is going to make you safer. I don't know what to tell you. I'm a black man who grew up in Chicago in the 70s and 80s. I do not have a lot of confidence that the police are going to be the arbiters for, what is bias like that is
Yeah.
a liberal, a what I call a paleo liberal approach to justice and protection. It doesn't exist. The other thing I want to mention too that's important, we have in Pennsylvania one of the worst massacres against Jews in this country. Um, the Tree of Life massacre
Synagogue. Yeah.
happened in
Horrific.
Pittsburgh, right? But what a lot of people don't understand about the motives of that hateful human being who was caught, arrested, charged, and imprisoned is that he didn't just hate Jews. He hated the fact that the Jews he targeted were helping black and brown immigrants come to this country.
Yeah,
So these were Jewish folks who were committed to racial justice and immigrant rights. So it wasn't just random Jewish people. He was against anyone who lifted up black and brown people, anyone who believed in social justice. He was ultimately a white Christian nationalist, white supremacist who chose to focus on the Jews who we found most contemptible, and those were the ones who embraced Tikkun Olam, which
that's
is,
right.
part of
That's right.
the Jewish faith that is so meaningful. And we have to connect those dots because the through line of my campaign is our fates are intertwined. I
Yeah,
stand up for folks, who are subject to targeting by ICE, even though I'm not an immigrant or descend from immigrants. As a
yep,
person whose 16 great great grandparents were born into states where slavery was a state law and they all died free, they weren't waiting for Abraham Lincoln. They freed themselves,
that's
but
right.
they also felt a common cause with other people. And that's the work. We got to show up for our neighbors.
And that's beautifully said, Rep. And to kind of build on that, I can speak as a human rights lawyer. Legislation that simply has harsher punishments but doesn't have restorative justice or better infrastructure, they don't actually decrease crimes. If all you're doing is punishing after the fact, you're not actually solving the problem. No hateful person's going to be like, well, before this law was passed, I would only get life in prison. Now I'm going to get a
Right.
double life sentence. That doesn't solve anything, right?
There's
And
no
I think
deterrence.
none. It's not a deterrence, and I think your whole assessment there was beautiful because you said, "Hey, sure, let's pass these laws. However, they need to have actual rubber meets the road impact to prevent the hate crimes in the first place. Otherwise, all we're doing is giving the state more power, more ability to punish a small community without actually making any of it safer." And that's an important distinction to have. As we're down to, we got about 10 more minutes left in the conversation, about 8 more minutes actually. I want to talk about what's the sprint to the finish look like in these last 30 days. How can folks get involved in your campaign? What can they do to support? Obviously, donating is a big part of it, and I'm going to encourage folks to continue to donate. But what else can folks do to play a role in making sure we get you across the finish line so we have an actual, meaningful, people funded progressive champion in Congress?
Yeah, I appreciate the ask. People need to know that I'm running. People need to know nationally. So everyone who's watching or listening, what have you, if you're not in my district, that's okay. I'm running to be your bonus rep.
Hmm.
Right? Because we need more bonus reps. I wanna be
Yeah,
your rep if your congressperson is not representing the values and priorities that
yeah.
you embrace, right? Because this is a federal position. What I'm doing is not just gonna impact the 3rd congressional district in Philadelphia, it represents the entire nation. And so I need your support financially. And look, I was telling you about how, there are folks who give me $1, $5, whatever. Whatever you can contribute, that would be great. But you can also volunteer virtually by going to chrisrabb.com/volunteer. And you can participate, you can join remotely, and you can also lift up me on social media, Chris Rabb on Instagram, Blue Sky, everywhere else, and let people know that there is a true progressive with a strong progressive legislative track record who doesn't take corporate PAC money, who acknowledges a genocide, who's against establishment politics, and who's running to serve because we have a lot of politicians, but too few public servants. And I think that's important in this moment because you want to know, because in Pennsylvania, one of the first things people say to me or ask me on the stump if they don't know me is, how do I know you're not going to be the next Fetterman?
Mm,
Right? And
good
the thing,
question.
right? And it's a great question because if they don't know me and they like what I say, well, like they liked what Fetterman said. The difference is he didn't have a track record. I have thousands of votes over a decade. I have hundreds of bills I've introduced. I have a clear and consistent track record as a progressive public servant. I have receipts. Fetterman has tweets.
Mm,
Tweets are not enough. I've put in the work. And I think that's one way that distinguishes me from so many others who do not have a relevant track record. I've been talking about this stuff and legislating for years. I introduced an anti-ICE bill in 2017, months after I took office,
Mm,
because that's the work. Slogans are cool, but ultimately we hire folks in these positions to legislate, and
yeah.
that's something I take very seriously as a nerd.
I didn't know that about you, that a decade ago, you introduced a bill acknowledging that we need to rein in ICE. That's fantastic. That to me is a smoking gun of a receipt of progressivism. That's what you want. Not someone who's asking for more power and promising to do the work. Someone who's done the work for a while and say, "Hey, if you elevate me, we're going to elevate this to the federal level as well." Last question before you
Yeah.
go. Um, we get you elected, and I want to reemphasize this point to the people watching here, and I've put in the link in the chat so you can donate and volunteer. The primary is the election. In
Yes.
November, it's gonna be you could sweep the rest of the campaign and you'll win by a landslide in November. So whoever is the nominee in on what is it, May 19th is gonna be the
Is
Democratic
gonna
member
be
of
the next
Congress
member of
in November.
Congress. I don't even know if we have a Republican on the ballot. I
So
don't actually
so
know.
literally you could sleep, for the next 8 months. You won't because 'cause you're a worker, but that's
That's
the
right.
point, and so this primary is it. The question is, we get you elected. In the first 100 days, what are your top 1 or 2 priorities that you are making sure you're moving heaven and earth to get past?
Well, I really wanna make sure that I'm joining, a new Democratic majority
Yeah.
with a badass subset of progressives who will hold our own party to account and make sure that we have, a Speaker of the House, who is, reflective of our shared values, because ultimately, 1 out of 435, that's a tough ratio. So we have to do this in community and collaboratively. We need to invoke the 25th Amendment. We need
Yes.
to use our authority to impeach, and I know we've impeached the dude twice before. We need to make sure that we hold all of these thugs to account, who are part of this extremist administration. But we also have to plan for a post-Trump world. We have to identify a clear path to a transformative vision of society that our party has not set out politically or legislatively. And so, whether that's talking about Medicare for all, whether that's talking about raising the minimum wage to a living wage,
Right.
right? It's still $7.25. It's absurd.
Right.
We need to make sure that we amend the War Powers Act so we don't let any future president get away with what's happening now in Iran and all the other things that have led up to it. Um, these we also have to remove moneyed interests. We need to have campaign finance reform. One of the reasons Zoran was so successful is we had ranked choice voting, which is a
Mhm.
bill I've introduced in the Pennsylvania
Right.
legislature, and also public financing of campaigns. So we remove the entrenched donor class from the politics of of electing folks that is so cynical,
Yeah.
and changing that dynamic is what allowed for a Zoran to happen. If
Right.
he didn't have public financing and ranked choice voting, he would not be the mayor no matter how great a candidate he was. And so those structural issues have to be addressed. The other thing I want to mention too, real quick, is we need to understand the importance of media literacy and media justice. The fact that you're doing this as an independent influencer in media and you're not subject to what CNN wants you to do or MS Now or whatever,
Right.
Fox. Like, you are independent. You have a base that's growing, and that's extraordinary. We need to make sure that we don't have 5 tech bros controlling everything, and that the only way we can restore, if that's the right word, a participatory democracy is making sure that we have true diversity of thought and expression in media, and to break up these monopolies in the most meaningful ways, because anything you care about, whatever it is going to be influenced by the electoral process, the media process, the media landscape, and also tax policy. Because the way we're going to fund all these things we're talking about is taxing the ultra wealthy. And we've done it before. We need to do it again. And when we do it, we can pay for all these things that centrists believe are too pie in the sky and can't be done, when we know all these other industrialized nations have been doing it for generations.
What I love about what you just said, Rab, as we wrap up, is that you just listed 5, 6, 7 amazing things that the party should be voting for. Yeah, you called out, we got to get rid of Trump. I get that. But my problem with the Democratic Party right now is that's the extent of what they're talking about. Let's just get rid of Trump. Let's just get that. He's not going to be the solution to, that's not going to solve our problems, just getting rid of him until you address the systemic issues. And everything you pointed out is not pie in the sky. It's extraordinarily practical, extraordinarily necessary, extraordinarily possible. We just need to get the members of Congress with the testicular fortitude, as I like to call it, to get the goddamn job done. Rep, thank you so much for running. Your website is in the link. Folks are loving you in the comments that they're going to be supporting you as well. Final thought before we tune out for today.
Uh, Organized people beat organized money every time. And all the people who say it can't be done, those are the people we need to ignore and be part of the solution. And as someone who descends from Black abolitionists and civil rights activists and freedom fighters, this is a legacy and an inheritance that I embrace that informs all the decisions I make as a person, a public servant, as a father. I'm a father of a queer son. I'm a father of a Muslim son. I want everyone to feel seen in this campaign and this society. This is our victory on May 19th and beyond. I'm so pleased that you have lifted my candidacy up. We are brothers. I cannot wait for us to do the real work after I'm sworn into office based on the wide support around the country that you have helped garner for me. So thank you, brother.
Amen to that, brother. I appreciate you so much. Rep Christopher Rabb running for Congress in Pennsylvania, District 3. ChrisRabb.com is the website. Make sure you go on and donate. And if you can't donate, make sure you volunteer. Thank you for tuning in to Let's Address This with Qasim Rashid. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so we can continue to protect your human rights and our democracy. We'll see you next time. Peace out.